Hello, guys, and I hope you are well. Thank you very much for the hard work you are doing. I see it, and I do appreciate it very much. Now, for today, I'm going to go over some basic things, and I'm going to then go over the homework questions and give you a little more so you can work today and complete the homework for tomorrow. Now, the first thing that I have here is the actual syllabus, and you see it's topic 4.9. So we're reaching the end of this topic, so 4.9. So we're talking about the normal distribution and curve. So awareness of the natural occurrence of the normal distribution. I think we covered this on the previous two lessons. Now, properties of the normal distribution. I think we have covered this also, that you have a bell-shaped symmetric curves. Now, the diagram, which is important, we talked about it, but I'm going to again reiterate a couple of things. First, the IB tells us that we need to know the following facts: that you need to know that 68%, you need to know that 68% of data is within one standard deviation. So basically that says that you have from here to there you have 68%, and you can split this 68 in two and you get basically 34. So you don't necessarily need for the IB to know the 34.13. 34 would be enough here. Now the next thing you need to know is that, let me see what I can do here. You have to know that 95% is within two standard deviations. So that means that within two standard deviations, within two standard deviations you have 95%. So these are important numbers that you need to know for the IB. And then, so if you for the IB, if you divide this by 2, you get 47.5. I'm going to write these numbers down. And then the last thing you need to know is that you have 99.7 within 3 standard deviations. So that means that within 3 standard deviations from here, so 99.7% to here, 3 standard deviations. Now, a couple of numbers that you should know. 68 divided by 2 gives you 34. So you have, let me change again my color here. You have 34% and 34% here, roughly. Then also you have 95% divided by 2 gives you 47.5. So that means you get here, or here you get 47.5. So this area here is 47.5. And then last is that 99.7 divided by 2 gives you 49.85. So for the IB, this last thing here, if you go from here all the way to 3 standard deviations, you get this number. So we're going to use these numbers in the problems that are following. So let's revise the numbers that the IB definitely specifies. You need to know the 68%, which is within one standard deviation. You need to know the 95% within 2 standard deviations, and then 99.7% within 3 standard deviations. I'm going to say it again. So let me say it again. We have 1 standard deviation, 1 standard deviation, 2 standard deviations, and 3 standard deviations. So in total you have 68%, or 34 and 34. 2 standard deviation is 95%, or 44.7 and 44.7, and last 99.7%, which splits into 49.85 and 49.85. So you can come up with these numbers as long as you remember this, the 68, the 95, and the 99.7. You can come up with the rest of the numbers. Now let's see what we can do on the homework. So the first part is here. I gave you that suppose x is normally distributed with mean 30 and standard deviation 5. So if you're going to write this problem in terms of notation, which is important, x is normally distributed and you have mean 30, and it's important to see that the standard deviation will put it squared there. That's the notation. Now state, so for me it's I see immediately by having this the following, and you can see the graph here, but I'm going to kind of give you a couple of hints. So I start at 30. Oops, sorry for that. So I have 30. And now how do you use this 5? Okay, let's see. This 5 means you're gonna go 5 this way to the number 35, and 5 this way, and you get 25. So this is 1 standard deviation. Now 1 more, so 5 more. 5 more means you're gonna go to 40, and 5 more this way, you go to 20. This is 2 standard deviations. And let's do 3 standard deviations. 5 more, you go to 45, and hopefully that makes it clearer. And you go 5 to the left is 25, and that's how you get your graph. So this is your mean here. So that's your mean. So mean equals 30. Standard deviation equals 5, and I told you need to kind of provide this. Now you do the curve this way, and on the other side, and this way, and that's your curve, and you're done, right? And let's put a couple of things. This is your curve, this is x. This you can put a break because you go to 25 here, and that's it, you are done. Now let's read the questions. The question says state a value. So here question A. So let's deal with question A. State a value which is 2 standard deviations above the mean. All right, so I start at 30 here, and 2 standard deviations, 1, 2, and the answer is 40. So the answer to this question, this is 40. So that's what you see here. Let's see this. 1 standard deviation below the mean. All right, so let's go below the mean. You start here and you go 1 standard deviation below the mean, so it's 25. So the answer here is 25, and that's what you see here. Hopefully that is clear. B. Describe the following values in terms of the number of standard deviations above or below the mean. So we have 35. All right, let me see at my graph. Oh, 35. 35 is 1 standard deviation above the mean. 1 standard deviation above the mean. Let's see number 20. I look at my graph. Let me see at my graph. 2 standard deviations below the mean. 2 standard deviations below the mean. And let's see the last question, 45. Let me see 45. 1, 2, 3 standard deviations above the mean. And that's how you answer this question. And let's see now the next. Draw a curve to illustrate the distribution of x. So the curve, I think it's the graph that was provided here. And now, what proportion of values of x are between 25 and 30? So let's see now. I'm going to try to find a new color if I can. Alright, I'm going to use this one. So have the numbers 25 and 30. So 25 is here, 30 is here. Is this one. So I already know that the answer is 34%, but because in this book we have a more exact answer, the answer is 34.13. So how do I know this? How do I know it? So it's 34.13 according to this book, 34.13%. Right, that was not very clean there, so let me see if I can fix it. Okay, so the answer is here, and it's 34. So it's 34.13%. Now, it's from these numbers that we memorized before, here, from this number here, or from this number here. Okay, so now let's go to the next one. They say, for the last one, they say find the probability that a random selected member of the population will measure between 35 and 40. Okay, 35, that's the hardest one, 35 and 40. So let's do that question. I hope you see that I have 2 standard deviations from 30 to 40, 2 standard deviations. And half of this from 30, so half to go from 30 to 40 is half of 95. So let's refer to this thing. So from here to here, all the way from here to here, so all this is half of 95, so we said is 47.5. So this whole thing here is going to be 47.5, and I'm going to subtract this part here, which is the same as this. I'm going to subtract this part here, all this part, which is 34.13. So sorry, I'm going to subtract 34.13. So if I do this calculation, if I do 47.5 minus 34.13, I get 13.37. Now you see here that I have 13.59. So let's discuss how this number came about. The book used these numbers here. So the book used the 13.59. So the book used just this number. But for the IB, I think the IB would expect you to answer this one, because you know the 47.5, which is half of, you know the 47.5, which is half of 99, and then you know the 34. So actually, let me kind of correct that, make it even better. To make it even better for the IB, you would just subtract this number. From 47.5, you would subtract 34. So 47.5 subtract 34, and you get 13.5. So you get 13.5%. So that would be good enough for the IB. So let me write it one more time here to see the calculation. what I did is to find this green area here, this whole thing here. I know that is half of 95, so half of 95, and I'm going to subtract this area here, which is half of 34, so 34, half of 34, so I find the final answer of 13.5% or 0.135, and that's how you do this problem. Alright, let's go to the second one. Suppose that the variable x is normally distributed according to the curve shown here. State the mean and the standard deviation. Alright, I see clearly that the mean is going to be 20. I also see that from 20 to 24 is one standard deviation, so one standard deviation is 4. So that's it. Find the proportion, so let's go to B now. Find the proportion of values which are between 20 and 24. Alright, between 20 and 24 is half of one standard deviation, so actually the answer is for this, for the IB, you could just have answered here that is 34%, or let's be exact, 34.13. That's okay. Between 12 and 16, between 12 and 16 is exactly like the problem we just did before. So let's see, this whole thing that I'm doing here, from here to there, is half of 97. So it's half of 97 is, sorry, half of 95, half of 95, and I'm going to subtract this part here, which is half of 68. So it's exactly like before, is 13.5%, or if you want to be exact, 13.59. That's now that goes with this book. We will find even better ways later on when we use the calculator. And then greater than 28, so from here and above, greater than 28. Now I want you to see this whole thing. So I'm going to, let's find a nice color to do that, this one. From here to there, all the way to the end, so from here all the way to the right is 50%, which is 100 divided by 2. So 100 divided by 2 minus, I'm going to subtract now this part. I'm going to subtract this part because I want to go from 28 and above. This part, because it's symmetric, this part is half, not because it's symmetric, this half, this part here is exactly half of 95, so it's half of 95. So if you do this calculation, you have 50 minus, you get 2.5%. Or if you want to use the book's numbers, you can say 2.28, but that's more than okay. Alright, the next problem now, 3, says a school's grade 12 students sat for a mathematics examination. Their marks were approximately normally distributed with mean 75 and standard deviation 8. So if I was going to write this is x, it's normally distributed with 75 mean and 8 squared. We write 8 squared there. Now copy and complete the bell-shaped curve, assigning scores to the marking on the horizontal axis. So that's 75 here, so let's do that. You start with 75. The standard deviation is 8, so 75 plus 8 will give me 83. Plus 8 again, get 91. And plus 8, I get 99. That's it, just plus 8 every time. Plus 8, plus another 8, and plus another 8. Let's go on the left side. 75 minus 8 gives me 67. Subtract 8 again, give me 59. And subtract 8 again, 51. So if you put these numbers down, the examiner will be so happy, right? So minus 7 this way, minus 8 this way, minus 8 again to find the 59, and subtract this, and you get this number. Now, what proportion, so for B, what proportion of students, okay, so what proportion of students would you expect to have scored more than 83? So 83 and above. That's not a good color. I think the one I had before was better. So 83 and above. So 83 and above. So the whole thing from 55 and above is 50. Minus, I'm going to subtract this portion here. So this portion, we already know it's 34%. So minus 34, you get 16%. Now, if you want the exact books numbers are there, but you don't have to. Now, less than 59, so from 59 and below. So again, what I'm going to do is 50, which is this part from 75 and below, and what am I going to subtract this time? Let me see, I'm going to subtract, I want from 59 and below, so I'm going to subtract this portion here. Oh, that you cannot see it very well. I'm going to subtract this portion, which is what? This is half of 95, so minus half of 95. So if you do this, 50 minus 95 halves, you get 2.5. So 2.5%. All right. And now let's do the last one, between 67 and 91. Between from here, so let's see. I want the number from 67 to 91. So let me add it. So I already know that I get 68 from here to there. And this portion here is, we have done it multiple times up to now, so let me write it down so we can have it. So for 3, it's going to be 68 plus, so I'm looking for this part here, this part here. What is this part here? I know that from here to here is 34, so plus 34, sorry, oops, this is it's 95, so from here to here is 95 halves, so 95 halves minus 34, so it's just arithmetic, it's not something more than that. So 68 plus 95 halves minus 34, I get 81.5, or that exact number there. Now, for the next problem, number 4, it says state the probability that a randomly selected normal distributed value lies within one standard deviation either side of the mean. Okay, so we have kind of done that. So you have the graph. Get your nice graph here. You get the mean. You get that value, which is the mean plus one standard deviation, and the mean minus one standard deviation. And we know that within one standard deviation is 68%. That's what the IB wants to know, 68%. So I know that here it says 68.26, but the idea here is this. And now so for the next one, it says is more than 2 standard deviations about the mean. So here is 2 standard deviations. So more than 2 standard deviations. So we're looking for this shading here. All right. So to do this, let me do this. So this whole thing from here to there is 50 minus, let's talk about minus what? Minus, so it's basically arithmetic, these questions. Minus this part. What is this part? This is 95 halves. So what do I get? 50 minus 95 halves is 2.5%. I know, again, I keep on saying that in the book they are more exact, and we will be more exact using technology later on.